Okay, so I know what everybody is thinking. Is television bias? That's basically like asking, do humans need oxygen? Though the notion of television being biased is widespread, the subject is still being debated to this day. It may not seem like it, but television bias can easily be entered into any television program via advertising, the terminology that is being used, and how the talent presents different information. What is television bias, you ask? It is the prejudice a person would have in favor or against certain subjects that are being televised. Examples of television bias can date back to early broadcast shows in the 1960s, such as The Brady Bunch or The Lawrence Welk Show. Both of these shows had conservative undertones. Shows like these are not regularly thought of as bias, but there can be bias present without the opinion or subject being outwardly supported. Many television shows produce content that uses the theory of agenda setting. Agenda setting is the theory that can be described as the news media's ability to push a certain topic towards the public's eye. The more frequent the subjects are covered, the more prominent the public will believe the subject to be. Agenda setting is closely related to TV bias because they are both used to push a certain point to the potential viewing audience. It is likely that the average viewer of a television program is not thinking about the biased information that they are receiving. Producers rely on the innocence of the viewer when writing a show. The audience typically believes that the content being consumed through the television is unbiased because producing such content is seemingly the right thing to do. Let's talk advertisement. Any program that you see on television is paid for in one way or another by a sponsor. That is why there are so many commercials during the breaks in between shows and programs. Commercials that run in between the program's content are not the only way for sponsors to get the message across, though. Consider the following. In a typical newscast, there is about an hour's worth of content, and within that hour, there is nearly 25 minutes that is allocated to commercial advertisements. This is where the companies pay anywhere from hundreds to thousands of dollars per spot. All of the news must fit into the leftover 35 minutes in which the producers have to fill with important information. This is where the bias can come in. I have here WEHT Local in Henderson, Kentucky. There's a program called Local Lifestyles, which is an ABC affiliate. In this interview, Laura Kirtley is talking to the costume director of The Good Wife via satellite interview. The costume director was seemingly being interviewed with the intentions of promoting the costume designs of the television show that he was working on the set of. One thing that you can see that stands out like a sore thumb in this interview is the giant banner that reads Dryel in the background. In this case, the company that owns Dryel hired the costume designer to do interviews with different television stations to promote that product. Dryel also hired out an agency to sell this interview to the producers of different stations. The station doesn't technically buy the interview so much as the fact that they are giving free advertising to the company via this interview. Companies such as Dryel do this because it will typically cost them less money than to buy actual airtime to promote their product. Another way television can be biased is showing support or disdain during political campaigns. Though news sources claim to have unbiased news coverage on political campaigns, there are prejudice undertones present. So what can we do as future producers, reporters, editors, and promotional writers to avoid television bias? One thing we can do is avoid using loaded language. Loaded language is an innocent way of making your potential viewing audience see facts of a story in a different way. Reporters may use loaded language to suggest something without challenging the assumption directly. We can also avoid lack of context. When a news source fails to give all of the information on a certain subject, the news source is ultimately failing the viewers by making them assume different things about the subject. Television bias can be easily entered into any television program via advertising terminology that is being used and how the talent presents different information. As people with radio and television degrees, we can be very influential to the public. So let's be smart about what we write, what we report, and what we produce so we can avoid this television bias together.